Hi guys, this time around I want to look back and document what might be the most important transforming toy ever made, Diaclone Battle Convoy. Or you might know it as the toy that became Optimus Prime. There's a few great videos on YouTube covering this figure already, but I'm hoping that this provides more of a visual archive of this incredible piece of history, and in a way can pay respect to the talented engineers that brought it to life. I'll start with just a quick context of the Diaclone line, and then I'll show you what you get in the box. A breakdown of the different toy modes and play features. Then I'll dive in and do a comprehensive comparison to a number of main Optimus Prime releases, so you can see all the differences. As always, there's chapter markers to help you skip ahead if you only want to see a specific section. Okay, so Diaclone launched in 1980 and quickly became Takara's flagship boys SF toy line. While the early releases were very grounded in sci-fi, 1982 saw a change of strategy alongside a wider industry trend of real-world transforming objects. The entire Japanese toy market had struck a chord with kids and the idea that everyday objects could be robots in disguise. This wasn't the sole reason for the introduction of the car robot line, however. There were market cost pressures which led Takara away from the larger world-building playsets to smaller, more affordable toys that, while cheaper, would allow for a larger range and multiple purchase behavior. Instead of convincing kids to convince their parents into buying one larger, more expensive toy, the entry point into the Diaclone line became cheaper. More kids playing with the toys suggests that word of mouth and peer pressure would build, and more kids would get into the line. At the same time, they were able to offer a wider variety, so then kids could collect more toys within the line, presumably leading to increased revenue overall. At the same time, Takara's engineering team had become much more adept at tackling complicated transformations, which facilitated the realistic-looking vehicles. It was a bit of a perfect storm of market factors, engineering progress, and good business strategy for Takara, and correspondingly the car robot line was a huge success. And so in 1983 they continued licensing more vehicles, but this time added a flagship figure to the line for those who had a little more to spend. Enter Battle Convoy. Battle Convoy wasn't just another robot toy though. It was Takara's attempt to create a flagship product for a line that was rapidly moving towards smaller, cheaper, more collectible releases. And it was a fantastic idea. When you have an army of robots disguised as cars, what's a better base for them than a trailer truck? Unlike most of the car robot line, Battle Convoy wasn't based on a specific vehicle release. Presumably kids didn't have the same familiarity with specific makes and models of trucks as they did cars. And so the designers were able to come up with a hybrid of a few cab-over truck designs. The cab-over or cab-over engine, also known as COE, was and continues to be very popular in Japan due to narrow roads and very strict traffic regulations. Okay, so jumping to the box. It's not hard to see why this is one of maybe only 2 or 3 toys that I display in the box. It's not just that the box looks so damn good though, although it clearly does with its vibrant, bold design and the generous window into the toy. But also it's not that much bigger than the toy itself, especially in terms of footprint. There's a lot to look at with a ton of text, but it all seems to work and does a great job of communicating the toy's value proposition. As I mentioned, you can see the truck cab and trailer clearly through the window, but we have the gorgeous photo of the robot mode with his rifle in the breakout yellow section, with an inset shot of the trailer's base mode. We also see a photo of the 3 primary colored Dinauts that are included. It's easy to overlook these fine print text specs in English, but interestingly, Battle Convoy has a maximum speed of 320 kilometers an hour. There's also this cute little note to keep a secret. There's a little typo in the English as well. The track changes into the car robot. Presumably that should be the truck. And interestingly, the copyright is 1980, despite it not releasing until 1983. On the bottom of the box, we get a tech diagram of the alt mode with the same specs, but this time in native Japanese. And alongside that, a breakdown of the mech mode. Japanese text calls out a lot of engineering details, including cameras in the eyes, a rescue detection system in the helm, and targeting sensors in the feet. The top of the box showcases the transformation from truck to mech, as well as the base and maintenance dock modes. The back of the box is even busier than the front, and we get this incredible diorama shot of 2 Battle Convoy units surrounded by several of the car robot toys. The accompanying main text beckons for all car robots wait for orders from Battle Convoy. So not only does this guy look like Optimus Prime, but he effectively was the leader of the car robots in a narrative sense, long before Hasbro or Marvel ever saw his handsome face. Then alongside that, we see 6 play modes, a mobile base for storage of car robots, the so-called mobile attack mode with the base module extended outside the closed trailer, the standard base mode with the buggy launched mechanic illustrated, the maintenance dock mode, then in the center we have the primary truck with trailer and mech modes. Along the bottom, Takara takes the opportunity to promote 4 of the other car robot figures, later to be known as Jazz, Sideswipe, Mirage, and Wheeljack. One final detail on the inside of the right-hand flap is a Diaclone membership card or license, offering children an opportunity to fill it out with their name and a photo to become members of the Diaclone army, and giving them the authority to operate Battle Convoy. Carefully opening the beauty carton and sliding out the polystyrene, don't ever expect anything that isn't borderline decrepit. My example is significantly damaged, and to be honest, it's one of the best I've ever seen. I'm not sure if it's just the grade of material that's used in this particular toy, or maybe the way that it's packed that requires a more heavy-handed approach. But many of my older toys and figures have near mint styrene, so I know it's not just material age. You do need to have some finesse to remove and repack this guy, as the toy sits so deep in the packaging that you need to go slow to prevent extraneous rubbing, which will further distress both the packaging and the toy. My recommendation is to stand the polystyrene upright and take advantage of the holes in the back to slowly step it out of the box, starting with the cab, then the trailer, then the cab, then the trailer, until you get a clean hold to slide the whole toy out. So what do you get in the box? Of course, there's the truck cab, the trailer, the 3 Diaclone pilots in red, blue, and yellow, the scout buggy, which is stored separately to its wheels, the rifle, the parts forming fists for the mech, 4 missiles for the base tower cannons, and a hose with 2 attachments, which the manual identifies as an energy replenishment pump and an energy supply adapter. Finally, there's an instruction sheet. Sadly, mine's a reproduction, but it does its job, showcasing all the toy features on one side with a gorgeous poster showcasing the car robot line on the reverse side. Now, I don't think there was a decal sheet. Mine didn't include any evidence of one, and the instruction sheet doesn't have an application guide or make mention of one at all. Taking a closer look at the truck mode, we're all pretty familiar with this toy, but if you kind of reset your familiarity with it to appreciate it with fresh eyes, it really is such a cool toy. The cab is beautiful in its blocky glory with the heroic red and blue color palette. 6 rubber tires help it to feel super smooth rolling backwards and forwards, and with a fair whack of die cast, it has a great feel to it when you push it along. The trailer connects very simply but stays perfectly in place, and the design just works incredibly well for playability. Of course, the big giveaway for this Diaclone version is the trailer billboard, proudly proclaiming its pre-Transformers heritage. There's a ton of mold marks in the grey plastic, but it all seems to add to the charm. Again, we have the rubber tyres, but interestingly, the blue trailer stands are mismatched to the dark blue of the cab. Now, one of the childhood mysteries for most kids of my age was opening the window of the cab and staring blankly at what kind of looks like seats, but there was never any human accessories to place in Optimus's truck. Of course, Diaclone solves the mystery with the Dionauts slotting comfortably into place and being visible through the front windows as they drive the mobile base to their next location. And of course, we can flip down the trailer door and load in either the reconnaissance buggy, which obviously needs his wheels just clipped on, or one of the car robot's allies. I only own car robot number 1, the Lamborghini Countach LP500S, otherwise recognizable as Red Sunstreaker. But he fits like a dream, either forwards, as though he's driving into the base on the highway, Knight Rider style, or reverse, so that he's ready to launch out of the trailer, which can be done by pushing down on the lever here up near the cab. I find that the buggy has much more impressive projection, as car robot number 1 has a little too much weight, but even more slightly asymmetrical geometry, which gets in the way. To transform the trailer into the main base mode, we can just flip out the stands either side here, and then lower the rear door. Take your time to just squeeze gently to give the tabs plenty of clearance. They're not fragile, but they lock in place, which means there's some resistance there. Then gently push down on the appropriate side of the trailer as you fold it open lengthways, which exposes the base in all its tactical glory. Again, I'm kind of trying to approach this with fresh eyes to fully appreciate the design and playability. So rather than just look at the differences to Prime, which I'll get to later, I want to step through and appreciate everything you get here. So to get it set up, let's raise the control tower module. I looked for an official name in the instructions, but couldn't find anything, so I'll stick with the control tower. It has this double arm that can be extended up quite high and rotates 360 degrees. There's this arm that poses up nicely, and the radar on a dial for some fun spinning action. Opening the cockpit, we can place a vigilant Dionaut in here to control it all. And last but definitely not least, we load up a missile on either side of the cockpit for some long-range defense. The manual suggests to store the rifle in this port in the corner, but you can also mount it in the back of the buggy, which is more fun. We've got terminals on either side for Dinauts to do their best support work for those out in the field. And these big floor decals are actually metal plates, which allow the Dinauts to stand confidently. The dimensions of the trailer were also cleverly engineered to fit 3 car robots abreast, one on either side of the launch pad. And you can connect the energy supply hose to one of these ports behind the launcher to create a refueling diorama. One other half mode is to leave the control tower extended when you close the trailer up. Then you can have this crazy attack missile thing sticking out of an ordinary truck rolling up the street. The other kind of half mode is the robot maintenance dock. So turn the trailer up on its end and pose the control tower in an appropriate position with the energy supply hose in its claw. Of course, now we just need a robot to repair. So let's jump to the truck and transform him. So fold down the legs to a 45-degree angle to give us clearance to release the arms. Grab the forearms by the headlights and rotate them out. Then pull the rear of the cab back, allowing it to rotate out. Next, lower the legs one at a time and rotate the feet to allow him to stand. Carefully spin the roof plate to reveal his head. And lastly, push the fists into place at the end of the arms. This is probably the hardest mode of Battle Convoy to be objective about for me. We're looking at pretty much the most iconic robot toy of all time. I find it really difficult to look at this guy and see it just for the small plastic and metal figure that it is. This toy became the toy that spawned a multi-billion-dollar toy franchise, and ultimately is one of the most recognizable and beloved characters in the world. For me personally, this figure set in motion a lifetime of wonder that's hard to underplay. And I can absolutely say that had I not experienced the G1 Optimus Prime as a kid, I wouldn't be here doing this now. So it's amazing to see him in his original Diaclone variant. Articulation is minimal, even by early 80s standards. The elbows bend, and that's largely where the posability story ends. But that never seemed to be an issue for us as kids. So now we've seen the ins and outs of the original Diaclone Battle Convoy, I want to run through a comparison with G1 Optimus Prime to identify the various differences. I was surprised myself to discover that I actually have 3 variants of G1 Prime, making 4 in total if I count Battle Convoy. Starting off, there's my original G1 Prime from my childhood, which dates to around 1985. Now this is in questionable condition. I've lost pretty much all of the accessories and the trailer door is broken. Actually, one of my kids broke it, as this guy has seen 2 generations of play. The very early, so-called pre-rub Transformers from 1984 were essentially an exact copy of Battle Convoy with different stickers. This one has some very subtle differences, mostly in the trailer, that we'll take a look at. Next up, I have the 2002 Japanese Special Edition reissue. This guy actually came with some questionable extras, including a single-colored die-cast matrix on a chain, an Autobot mousepad, and this very pedestrian non-transforming Prime. Lucky for me, he comes with 2 versions of the rifle, both the bloated 1984 type, very similar to Battle Convoy, and the later slimline type. Typically, I display this Prime in truck trailer mode, and I steal his fists and the bloated rifle from my OG Prime to be displayed in robot form. Lastly is the G1 Missing Link Prime from a few years ago. The premise here was to completely re-engineer the toy using modern design and manufacturing techniques, but keep the 80s aesthetics, with a view to further enhance the playability of the toy. There were actually 2 releases of the Missing Link. This one is the C01, which is the toy accurate release. But Takara also released a C02 version, which leaned closer to the anime. Okay, so checking these out side by side and starting with the truck mode, there were very little differences from Battle Convoy in '82 for the next 20 years. The most obvious differences being the number plate decal and the windscreen lens. Battle Convoy features both a 55263Z Diaclone plate and an extremely hard to see Highway B4377 plate. Interestingly, Optimus Prime never featured any bumper decals until the Missing Link release, who included the option to either include a Transformers bumper or a retro Highway B4377 plate as a direct throwback to its original incarnation, Battle Convoy. The 2002 release features a slightly more elongated rectangular cavity in the bumper also, compared to the 85 Prime's square void. All of the releases feature a warmly tinted transparent lens, which was upgraded to a dark blue with the 2002 Collection Series release, reminiscent of the coveted VSX set release from 1985. The C01 toy version of Missing Link returned to the original style, however, which in my opinion gives you a better view of the new Matrix of Leadership chamber. It's a nice feature that this can be removed, however, and there's still the familiar layout underneath. While we're on the inside of the cab, this is where you'll see one of the only two differences between Battle Convoy and the 1985 Prime. Battle Convoy's insert features this very fine seat detail versus OG Prime's bolder crosshatch design. The back of the seat on Battle Convoy also sits higher, such that you can clearly see it from the rear when in Mech Mode. Flipping to the underside, again almost identical. Missing Link Prime does a fantastic job of blending in, despite there being drastically different engineering to facilitate all the additional articulation. Rotating to the side, again all very similar. The earlier molds only have a single fixing point for the chrome smokestack, so it's free to rotate. As kids, I think we sometimes pretend they were additional guns. Note the very minor difference between the Battle Convoy and the 85 Prime, in that Battle Convoy features a rectangular mounting point, whereas the 85 Prime has a much more circular mount. In the later releases, however, these are mounted in 2 points and have no movement, so no arm cannon fun. Jumping to the top view, the big giveaway on Battle Convoy is the lack of a Transformers faction decal, so you have the exposed screw holding the head in place underneath. Both the 2002 and 2024 Missing Link versions also have the sticker slightly recessed, whereas the 85 mold clearly just added the sticker on top. As I mentioned earlier, there's also the very first run of primes that do not feature the faction rub decal. Okay, now transforming them all into their mech modes, you'll need to excuse my 1985 Prime, as his hands and rifle were lost long ago. But referencing a number of official Takara archival publications, the fists are shown to be identical to Battle Convoy. Possibly they were retooled later in production, but without the fists from my original toy here, I can't confirm, unfortunately. Moving to the 2002 release, they gave him these very strange kind of integrated beer cooler rings. The hands themselves, though, are a lot less swollen than Battle Convoy and appear more in scale with the robot figure. Looking at the inside of the fists, you can also see that the thumbs bend down on the O2 version versus the earlier straight thumb. Missing Link gives us gorgeous articulated hands that can open and fantastically don't detach. While all the other variations are parts forming and can easily be lost by my younger self, Missing Link tucks his away into his hoodie kangaroo pocket and goes about his business. Alongside the blue windshield update of the 2002 release, Hasbro also decided to give Prime blue eyes, presumably to make the whole toy slightly more anime accurate. As mentioned earlier though, Missing Link has a range of upgraded details, from hands that articulate and actually are fixed into his body, through to the gorgeous molded and painted forearm detail designed to bring the original Diaclone Battle Convoy's corresponding decal to life. In terms of articulation, he now has a shoulder lift, head rotation, his legs can splay outwards and come forward, his ankles rotate, and he even has an ab crunch. Comparing the rifles, we can see that Battle Convoy's is quite chonky and glossy. A lot of the lines aren't exactly straight either. The 2002 Special Edition gives us the two styles of rifle that I mentioned, one that mirrors Battle Convoy's and another much leaner firearm that I believe matches the wider production run of Prime in the 1980s. Finally, Missing Link gives us a definitive return to chonk, with the original style but in a much cleaner mold and matte finish. Moving to the trailers, this is where we see most of the obvious, but also the less obvious differences between the releases. The clearest, of course, being the telltale Diaclone decal on the side of the trailer. But if we look closer on this axis, we can also see the 5 cavities, 2 above the Diaclone label and 3 below, that allow for the mounting of the metal plates inside the trailer. As the Transformers didn't come with the magnetic Dianaut pilots, the added cost of metal plates in the trailer made no sense and so were removed. The aforementioned pre-rub 84 Prime still featured the metal plates, however, so there will be versions of the trailer out there with the Autobot decal and the metal plates. As they updated the tool to remove the pegs for the plates, there are some very minor cosmetic updates also. Looking at the rectangular detail below the Battle Convoy label, we can see horizontal ribbing that is absent in all the Transformers versions. If we look above the label, there's this weird circular pattern, and on the Diaclone trailer, there are 7 diagonal lines, versus only 6 on the Transformers trailers. If we move to the top view, they all feature different molding and sink marks in the plastic, with various shade differences across the greys also. To my eye, the 2002 release is actually the best looking grey. The Missing Link is a touch yellow and less bold in comparison. The Diaclone trailer also features this recessed section at the rear near the door clips that was deleted in the Transformers versions. Spinning to the rear, the Diaclone version is again a standout, with its huge "BC keeps Diaclone truckin'" bumper sticker. To me, this really feels out of character for the line, and I actually did some research to confirm it was genuinely an original decal. Apart from that, we see this very clear ejection mark in the plastic on the middle right-hand side, with the circular marks rippling out from it. This is strangely consistent across all examples of Battle Convoy that I've seen. A much more minor difference is the molded handle detail. On Battle Convoy, it's considerably smaller than his Transformers counterparts. You'll also note that the overall plastic color of this rear door has yellowed with age considerably on my Battle Convoy. In isolation, it's not so obvious, but when you see it side by side with the other examples, it's quite clear. Okay, if we flip to the underside, we start to see a few more differences. Again, mostly differentiating Battle Convoy from its descendants. The most obvious is the manufacturer's stamp, which is of course different for all four. Battle Convoy just shows Takara Japan with no year at all. 85 Prime confirms that it was still made in Japan and lists copyright Hasbro 80 and 82, as well as Takara Co Japan 80 and 82, along with some kanji, which loosely translates to creative and copyrighted work. The 2002 Prime is where we see production shifted to China, with copyright 92 solely to Hasbro Inc. Finally, Missing Link acknowledges copyright to Tomy and is made in Vietnam. Otherwise, the three Transformers trailers are largely identical from below. The Diaclone version clearly has the lighter blue stands, but if we look closely, we can see that the axle mold has an additional detail of lengthwise lines at the back. Lastly, on the stand mounts, we see larger holes that are closer to the axle than on the 85 and 02 versions. Missing Link omits these completely. Okay, so now cracking open the trailers, we see that while the overall layouts are quite similar, there are also distinct differences. The most obvious is that Battle Convoy keeps the lighter blue color for the command tower and the two terminals on the sides. I often wonder why Hasbro chose to keep these terminals in place for Optimus Prime. If they had to modify the tool to remove the metal plate, they could have taken those off as well, saving money and reducing confusion for us kids who had nothing to put in the seats. We can also see the raised clips that are holding the metal plates in place on the sides, allowing for the Diaclone pilots to stand magnetically in place. These are of course absent on the Transformers releases, and the corresponding floor decal appears to have gotten less metallic over time. The command towers are largely identical in form. Again, Battle Convoy is the lighter blue with the yellow lens. While my 85 is missing its lens, it was the orange, similar to Battle Convoy. The 02 Special Edition continues its blue theme, and interestingly, Missing Link's command tower pulls forward and releases entirely to become an autonomous unit. In doing so, it sacrifices Roller's eject mechanism entirely, which is a huge shame and the only disappointing aspect to the Missing Link release in my book. Battle Convoy's tower missiles are a grey colour compared to the black on all the Prime releases, and you can see that the screws are inserted from the top, a detail that was also updated for Prime. They all still fire with a decent amount of force, and while Missing Link understandably has a little less travel, I'm pleasantly surprised by its performance. Moving to Roller, Battle Convoy's buggy was likewise in the lighter blue, with no rear pegs. As you can see, the launching mechanism was completely flat to make it more compatible with the Car Robots range. While my 85 Roller is long gone, I recall it being largely identical to the 02 model, which sees the addition of the rear pegs to help it better align with the revised launch mechanism. Missing Link strangely keeps the rear pegs, despite having no launch mechanism at all, but adds this cool rotating gimmick at the rear to showcase Roller's siren for the very first time in G1 guise. The launch mechanism on Battle Convoy is still incredibly potent and a huge amount of fun. So that's a detailed comparison between Battle Convoy and a number of major releases of G1 Optimus Prime. Lastly, for a bit of fun and to balance the love between Transformers and Diaclone, I wanted to showcase this guy next to the reboot Diaclone version of Battle Convoy from 2021. My review of Battle Convoy VMAX was one of my first videos on the channel and is still one of my most popular. So if you want to see how Takara reimagined Battle Convoy 40 years later, you can check that out. Okay, so thanks as always for sticking this out. See you next time. From 84 were essentially an exact copy. Bro, that's a really expensive way to scratch an itch. The very early so-called pre-rub transfer. Mate, please.